Winter is coming, and if you're gonna go out, you better make it memorable. This will be the last of my Game of Thrones list that I get out before the new season begins, and it's the one I had the most fun with. I'm gonna count down the top 10 deaths. This is a show that has given us a heck of a body count. A lot of characters gone out in a lot of different ways, some better than others. I want to pick my favorites. Ultimately, this is a subjective list. These are just the deaths that made me go, oh, the most, for whatever reason. So with that in mind, here we go with number 10. Robb Stark. You knew the Red Wedding was going to be on here somewhere, but because that event encompassed so many individual deaths, and I'm only doing them one at a time, we're going to start with Robb. In a lot of ways, this was just sort of the impact of the loss of that character, but in addition to that, just kind of how drawn out it was. I mean, you kind of realized he was screwed. For me, it was when they killed the direwolf. As soon as that happened, I'm like, there's no way he's getting out of that room. But then it just kind of draws it out as he gets hit with the arrows, but he's still standing. And his mother's screaming at him to run, and there's just no hope left. It's kind of painful in a way, but it makes it all the more impactful. Number 9. Lysa Arryn. I actually kind of wanted to put this one higher because this was a character I was very happy to see die, and just sort of the suddenness of it and just the impact it had on her, of her suddenly realizing how she had completely put her stock in the wrong person and seeing that hit her just before she got pushed off. With all that into account, I wanted to put her higher on the list, but the actual look of it, her falling through it looks kind of cheesy. And unfortunately, I do have to knock this death for that. Number 8. Ned Stark. Ned topped my list of favorite dead characters, and boy, his death definitely left an impact. And it really just sunk in at that moment, like, characters do not get that miraculous save. You see it in almost every other sort of story where a character who's so vital is about to die, but then some miraculous thing happens and some character swoops in at the last minute. You're looking around, you're waiting for that save to happen and come, and it doesn't, and the sword just swings down, and that's it. I don't think there were many deaths that are quite as impactful on the overall sort of assessment you have of the show as the death of Ned. Number 7, Shae. A bit like Lysa, she's on here because I wanted her to die so bad, and to not only have her die, but have Tyrion, the one who she took in and then betrayed so fundamentally, and she just, even before the betrayal, she was dragging him down so much, for him to be the one to just choke her out. Oh, that was cathartic. And the only reason this death isn't higher is kind of how damaging you saw it was for Tyrion to have to do that. I felt bad for Tyrion at the same time that I felt really good that she was getting killed. So that sort of internal conflict makes it a very strong moment, but makes the actual death slightly less enjoyable. So that's why I didn't go higher, as happy as I was to see Shae get just... Oh, it was nice. Number 6, Ygritte. Now, when I did my list of dead characters, she did actually make the list, and in a lot of ways, her death was handled incredibly well. It was handled exactly how it needed to be to continue to elevate that character, because when she first showed up in season 3, honestly, I kind of hated her. I hated the pairing of her and Jon Snow. I felt it devalued both characters to have them sort of fall for each other the way they did, but then when he switches sides, that immediately brought her back up, because she was not going to take that line down. And she held on to that right up to the end. And she's got him in her sights, and she does pause for just a moment, but they had her die at the exact right moment. Because if they'd waited any longer, or if she'd lowered the bow, or if it was clear she didn't have it in her to kill him, that would have taken some of the strength back away from the character again. But they picked the perfect moment to have that kid take her down. And that was just a great choice too. I did feel a little bit bad that Jon Snow might have to take her out. As much as I didn't like their pairing, I didn't feel like he deserved to go through that either. But for that kid to get his little moment of getting justice for what happened to his family and taking it out on her, I think that was the perfect person to take it, and it happened at the exact right moment when it should have. Number 5, Catelyn Stark. It's another Red Wedding death, but it does rate higher for me than Robb. I think just because you know that the one who they absolutely are after is Robb, and Robb's direct bloodline. So you kind of wonder for a split second, is Catelyn going to get killed? Because, you know, she's never going to raise an army on her own. She was only able to do so in service of Robb making a go for the crown. So there were some points that even after you realize Robb's not going to make it, that maybe she's not going to die. But as the weight of the whole event sinks in, you realize, no, she's going to die too. But she does not go down quietly. Takes out Walder Frey's wife, and then just standing there and not even fighting it when that guy comes up behind her and does the exact same to her is probably one of the darker deaths on this list, because a lot of the deaths on this list I think are fun in some way or were cathartic. This one was just kind of heavy, but it was executed incredibly well and in a way that really helped you feel the impact because they sort of slowed everything down for this moment to happen. Number 4, Tywin Lannister. You know, on paper, probably one of the most embarrassing deaths to happen in this show, or almost any show that I can think of, just to get gunned down on the crapper. I mean, that's a shameful way to go, but you know what? For a guy who was as powerful as he was and as high and mighty as he was and how much strength he had, to go out like that, somehow it just felt right. And it was cathartic. I've used that word a few times here, but cathartic for Tyrion to be the one to take him out, because Tyrion had taken so much of his crap, not only over the course of this show, but you really got the impact of over the course of his whole life. He'd been trying to please this man and taking his crap. No more. And he said no more with a crossbow bolt. Number 3, Oberyn Martell. Undoubtedly the most painful death that is on this list, and it's this high up for that reason alone. It's not one that I necessarily enjoyed, because some of these deaths I enjoyed on some level. Either it was a character I wanted to see die or something was cool about the death itself, but this one I did not have fun with, but it impacted me so heavily I can't not put it way up high on the list. You know, I've said it before and I will say it again, I do honestly think this is the most brutal death that I have ever seen anywhere, in any movie, in any TV show, in comic books, whatever. This is so painful, and not just the instant of death itself, but as soon as you realize that this guy is gonna turn the tables and take out this character who you love, the instant you realize that happens, like, oh no, and then the beating and the thumbs and the head. Oh man, it's brutal. It is so brutal. It's brutal on the characters, brutal on the audience, and it is an unforgettable death. I mean, this one still haunts me. I haven't watched it a second time since this aired, and I don't know how I'm gonna manage to do it, but man, even if I never watch it again, I will never forget it. Number 2, Joffrey Baratheon. I suspect for most people this is probably their number 1 death, and largely it's just because of how lovely it was just to finally see him die. Everybody wanted this guy dead. Every character in the show, everyone who watched the show, it was just such a, oh, finally, thank you. Because, I mean, he was annoying from the very first time you saw him, and he only got worse as he took so much pleasure and just proved to be such a sadistic bastard, just tormenting and torturing people. Not even just his enemies, just whoever happened to be in the room. It was just so wonderful to watch him die. And to sort of see the panic in his eyes as he realized what was happening to him. Oh, you deserve it, buddy. Actually, you deserve worse than you got, but I don't know if there was a death that truly would have been appropriately vicious, vile, painful, long enough for this character. But even with all that, he doesn't take my number 1. My number 1 goes to a death that I think a lot of people actually don't remember. And it was the first death of a character that I was happy to see die, and it was a death that sounded a certain growth for another character, and it's a death that I think is just a really cool death unto itself. And that is the death of Viserys Targaryen. That's right, you forgot about him, didn't you? You forgot about Daenerys' brother from the first season, because he was not around that long. But very much like Joffrey, you kind of hated him right off the bat, so it was just nice to see him die unto itself. But the way he was taken out, I have a sick sense of humor. I love a clever, ironic death, because he's in a situation where he's caused a ton of problems, but he's done it in this tent where he knows they are not allowed to spill blood. And the line that Daenerys says to him, "You will have a golden crown men shall tremble to behold," and him just be like, well, that's all I wanted. And he gets his golden crown when Drogo takes that molten gold and pours it over his head, which is not only a golden crown that he asked for, it kills him without spilling any blood. And then when he falls down and just the clang of that cooled metal hitting the ground, oh, that's just an awesome death and a character that deeply deserved it. And it just showed how fierce and vicious that Daenerys was willing to become. Yeah, that is my favorite death in Game of Thrones. But there have been a lot, many, many, many deaths. What is your personal favorite death in Game of Thrones? Whatever it is, drop something down in the comments and let's talk about it. Until next time, this council is adjourned.